We titled this one Armenia Genocide, Richard Verma, India Nuclear Deal, COVID-19, Candace Owens, ROTC. It's a little bit of everything under the sun here. Okay. So shown here is a photo that was taken at the end of 2019. I don't have a lot of experience with the man who's on the far right, but he and the man that's on the far left, whose name is Richard Verma, interviewed in 2019 on their Asia-focused podcast, Asia Economy-focused podcast. The woman in the middle, an American woman named Piper Stover. The only reason I found this podcast and had any interest at all in watching this podcast, this particular episode, and I've never even heard of this podcast at all, some Asia International something or other, I don't know, there's so many of these out there, is because of Piper Stover. The reason why I know of Piper Stover, I've never met her personally, is because she made the acquaintance of a friend of mine, maybe a friend of yours, or at least acquaintance of yours, someone who we follow and has been an incredible coach, a real coach to all of us, Dr. Jonathan J. Cooey of GigaOM Biological, who broadcasts out of Pittsburgh. Piper Stover was introduced to Jonathan Cooey maybe through a Dan Sorotkin. I'll let Jonathan explain it. Her story was, and he's told it to me before, it's my fault for not remembering the specifics here. It's not as if she just found his podcast and reached out to him. There was someone else that told her to connect to him or made her want to connect to him, something like that. And it was either late 2020 or 2021. She communicated with him. She sent him some financial support. Not exactly millions, but when you're trying to raise a family of 5 and all you got is one paycheck, a couple $100 here or there is a lot. For Jonathan, he was very appreciative, and he put, "Thank you, Piper Stover," on his intro slides. Piper Stover expressed a lot of concern about the state of China, the nation of China. And as it turns out, which is one of the reasons why Piper Stover was on this podcast in December 2019, is because this Asia-focused podcast wanted to extract from Piper Stover the stories and concerns that she had, firsthand experiences about her time in China. Because you see, she grew up in the United States. She's an American. She grew up in New York. And her story is that she, as a teenager, and you could tell she's somewhat athletic. She was actually like a long jumper or something like that with her high school team. She met someone who was of Chinese ancestry in her small town, upstate New York town of Cazenovia. And she was just so fascinated with the culture and the language. She wanted to learn it. Next thing you know, she and her husband, they get married probably in their 20s, and they decide to move to China. They learned Mandarin. She learned Mandarin because she just loved talking to this family. And they had their 2 children there. They raised them there. They all spoke Mandarin together. I'm sure they spoke English in the house still. And she worked as a consultant, as a liaison, a business liaison, and maybe even a translator for Chinese interests, Chinese businesses, maybe American companies that were cooperating with some Chinese companies. Maybe they were outsourcing to each other, something like that, right? Some international business middle person. That's a pretty cool job. That's pretty awesome. But I guess she had some sort of change of heart because in 2017, 18, she came back to the United States and suddenly started a biotech company. Not really, but this is her story. And then she's on this podcast where she's expressing concerns about Chinese communism and so on, and how China's going to hell in a handbasket. So she stayed in China an awful long time, and I don't know why, but just before the pandemic, she decided to come back to the United States. I guess that's good timing. I don't know. China's still doing okay, by the way. She told Jonathan Cooey stories that things were so bad in China that they just decapitate you in the streets. You know, if you show signs of being a little woozy, people, they will hold you down on the ground, and before you're dead, they will rip the eyeballs out of your head and donate them. Wow, man, that sounds pretty brutal. And of course, everyone would agree. If China, they're just chopping off heads and ripping out eyeballs all over the place, who's going to live there? I don't know exactly what's happening in China right now, but these are the stories that she's shared. And her relationship to Jonathan Cooey and her concern about Jonathan Cooey reached a point where she even sought out Jonathan to make sure that he knew. She even went to his house once or twice. Oddly enough, at one of those points, she even introduced Jonathan to another person, another man who was not Chinese, an American, but of Indian ancestry, who we just call Regular Guy. So, I want to provide the reminder of why this photo came into our purview. So the guy on the right, Richard Verma, I've never heard the name. I've never heard the name Richard Verma before.
This moment,
I wanted to remind you
when I first did hear the name Richard Verma and what the occasion was that led me to the name.
I just searched all of Whitney Webb's books. I bought them, the electronic copies, and the words Richard Verma, or even Verma, V-E-R-M-A, does not exist in those books at all. Not once. Not once. Candace Owens is talking an awful lot lately about Israel. What would that have anything to do with Richard Verma? Well, we'll figure that out in a little bit. But as you can see, I've explored this a lot, and the name just never comes up, which might imply he's a nobody. But then I look online, and I'm like, wow, Richard Verma, an American, although Indian ancestry. Richard Verma was the former United States ambassador to India. Now, India is not Ireland. India is now the world's most populous nation, the world's third largest economy, and is on pace in the next 10 or 15 years to have the world's largest economy. So he's ambassador to one of the two most important countries right now, between China and India. Those are our two most important ambassador positions. Simply because of the money, simply because of the population, simply because of the technology transfers. I know it's probably very interesting and fascinating to be an ambassador to Switzerland or Russia or Romania. I'm not saying that those are irrelevant, but when it comes to resources and people and capital, India and China are the two primary ones. And he's an Indian ancestry man. So that was also a first. So I haven't been studying U.S. relations with India, so I wouldn't have known that when I looked at that. Like, okay, that's interesting. And then I realized he was in the State Department, Deputy Secretary of State, Management and Resources for Hillary Clinton. It sounds like a very small role, but it's almost the number 2 role in the United States State Department when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State for President Obama. Wow. Never heard of him. He was side by side with Huma Abedin. Now, Huma Abedin is mentioned prolifically by many people because she's half Pakistani, although she's also half Indian. Huma Abedin, this longtime, very attractive aide of Hillary Clinton, who was married to some guy who was accused of being a pervert or whatever in New York, Wiener, I think, but now is remarried to a guy 10 years younger than her, who is actually the son of George Soros. Anyways, if you go into the Hillary Clinton emails, which everyone has loved to have done, many people focus on the Huma Abedin emails, but side by side with her name is Richard Verma. And people are like, we don't care about that name. Well, maybe he's just an imbecile. I don't know. I don't know much about him. But I do know that as I'm talking here, it's like, okay, so he was involved in a lot of stuff. Now, it also happens to turn out that during the Biden's presidential administration, 2021 to 2020, beginning 25, he appointed Richard Verma to go back to the State Department and head economic recovery for Ukraine. So I'm like, wow. And there's pictures of him with Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. They met multiple times. And when Obama was president, his most important diplomatic missions were to India. Obama visited India more than any other place. Relations with India was more important than anything else. So Obama and Richard Verma developed a really tight relationship. And again, I'm still talking here. I never knew about this guy because other citizen journalists are paid to lie and mislead you and not tell you what matters. I dig deeper. Richard Verma worked with Kerry, Senator Kerry, and then former Secretary of State Kerry, on the Iran nuclear deal. I dig deeper. Richard Verma worked side by side with Harry Reid, longtime senator from Nevada, on the India nuclear deal. I dig further. Verma was a national security advisor to Senator Harry Reid from Nevada for several years, from like 2001 to 2007. And then he was a WMD expert. I dig deeper. Richard Verma was hired as a legal strategist to help set up the Winberg Cancer Research Center Laboratory in 2000 and 2001 by then United States Representative John Murtha and HHS Secretary Donna Shalala. Meaning, Richard Verma, the guy who I never knew existed, provided the legal counsel for the laboratory, which hired to set up its IT infrastructure, Robert Malone, back in 2000 and 2001. And here he is side by side with a photo with Piper Stover, who then is reaching out to Jonathan J. Cooey, PhD, Ginkgo and Biological, who the current NIH director of the United States of America, an Indian national named Jayanta Bhattacharya, and I know I'm not using that word properly, but I'm using it that way to get a point across, even if it starts an argument, and I'm doing it for good reason. And Jayanta Bhattacharya says, leave Robert Malone alone. You know, the guy that Richard Verma worked for. I suspect that Jonathan Cooey had people visiting his house because he was such a national security threat as identified by the former ambassador to India, by the former assistant to Harry Reid, by the former assistant to Kerry on the Iran nuclear deal, by the former economic recovery advisor to Ukraine for the United States State Department. And it goes further. Candace Owens now is loving to talk about ROTC and the U.S. military. It's something to do with the Charlie Kirk assassination. Well, I'm not saying Richard Verma did anything, but you know what? He's one of the most senior lawyers ever in the U.S. military, just like regular guy was. And he was Air Force ROTC going in the 1990s. You don't think he has connections all over the place? If you wanted to talk to someone and make it seem so that the supposed assassin of Charlie Kirk was videoed in an ROTC Air Force place, well, then you should be doing your compound searches of people of significance who have been in the Air Force and ROTC, and you'll come up with Richard Verma at the top of the list. Another example of how Candace Owens will breadcrumb you to a place with just some random data that just looks a little bit suspicious, and then as soon as you get there, she'll throw some breadcrumbs around and lead you somewhere else. But until you show where it goes to, she'll just keep you at that one spot. She'll be drowning you and attacking you and assaulting you with just all kinds of just random data. And she'll say, oh, I guess that's suspicious. An out-of-state license plate. There was an Egyptian on the plane over there. Look at the way that person buttons their shirt. Look how this person holds their hands. There's no end to the amount of anomalies that you can find. It's endless anomalies. I have Legos behind me. You could probably find 80,000 anomalies which look weird and make a story up. But it gets better. So Richard Verma also cooperates a lot with Macron of France. How the heck did I come up with that one? Well, Macron of France, instead of having any intellectual conversation at all about President of France, Macron, Candace Owens wants you to talk about the type of genitalia that is or isn't between the legs of his Macron's wife. Now, I don't know exactly what the truth is there, and to be quite honest, I don't really want to think what's between those legs. I don't know. I don't even want to think about it. And if there is someone being dishonest there, I mean, look, you got to pick your battles. There's people in the world that believe they should be or want to be a different gender, and they've kept it a secret. That ain't going to stop tonight or tomorrow or ever. It ain't going to stop. And maybe some of those people have businesses. Maybe someone works at the grocery store. How do you know? Maybe some of them have political power. I don't know. And is it really at the top of my list right now? But Candace Owens, instead of saying, well, you know, this incredibly important, influential person, Richard Verma, working with Macron, and then thinking about all of the other associations there, what are we talking about? We're talking about what kind of garbage is between Macron's wife's legs. But anyways, Macron has worked a lot with Richard Verma because of very specifically the Armenia genocide. Wow. Big U-turn. Is that really a U-turn, though? Let's think about this, because I have a few pictures opened up here. Oh, yeah. I opened this one up very specifically because this is Richard Verma working with the head of one of the United States military agencies. And this is the DSCA, which stands for this Defense Security Cooperative Agency, the DSCA. The DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DTRA, the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, and the DSCA are all on the same level along with 14 other agencies. These are the 17 agencies within the United States military. The DSCA, the Defense Security Cooperative Agency, has the responsibility when the United States government earmarks millions or billions for the United States military to provide equipment and technology to different nations. The DSCA is the military agency that has the responsibility to making the purchase of and negotiations with and the transference of technologies to other nations. So this is Richard Verma in India working with the head of the DSCA, whose last name is Rixey, R-I-X-E-Y. So it's no surprise that there's another Rixey who used to work at the United States State Department, again, who wound up sitting at one point or another on the couch of Jonathan Cooey. Now, I don't think that Rixey and this Rixey are closely related, but I think that they are related. And I think it would make sense if one had something to do with helping the other one maybe get a leg up with a State Department job or something like that after their enterprising career selling shoes didn't work out or whatever the case. That would make a lot of sense, which now means we have at least two people potentially, maybe even three if you include regular guy. Three people sitting on Jonathan Cooey's couch because the former head of Economic Recovery Ukraine, the former ambassador to India, the former person who worked with intelligence for Harry Reid, worked on the Iran nuclear deal, worked on the India nuclear deal, and so on and so forth, and the Windber Cancer Research Center. How many connections of Richard Verma, a man that doesn't get one single wink in any book from Whitney Webb? How many of those people wind up on Jonathan Cooey's couch meeting his kids, maybe even bringing pretend children of their own? And by the way, anyone who has helped Jonathan Cooey lately, thank you, because he needs your help. There's no sponsors here. There's no lying about why people die. There's no secret patent money. This is the real deal, folks. We have found a real American who is trying to raise real kids, who has given everything and is being crushed by multiple people with the highest levels of intelligence and clearance in the United States of America and global government. He needs your help. This isn't, a George Webb on the 140th charrette singing songs around the campfire about, we're going to expose the Clinton Foundation or some bullshit like that. This is the real deal. And thank you for the people who's helped him out. I'm proud that I've been able to help him out as the best as I can as well.
But now we ask the $1 trillion question.
How the hell did this Richard Verma ever get into prominence? Look, I'm not saying that he didn't work hard. I'm not saying he isn't incredibly smart. He's a pretty good speaker. How the hell did this guy get to the point where Shashi Tharoor is talking to him directly in the Indian government? How did this happen? Oh, that's right. Going back to Macron of France, because Macron of France, one of his interests is the French efforts, and I think France is among the leaders in helping the nation of Armenia rebuild and become strong, and the nation of Armenia get recognition, and Armenians around the world recognition for the Armenian genocide. All right. Verma, for some reason which I don't quite understand, because I thought he was an ambassador to India, in 2023 and 2024, is appointed to go to Armenia and be part of these negotiations between Armenia and Azerbaijan. This is Richard Verma right there. And these are the heads of both Armenia and Azerbaijan, I believe. I think Macron might also be there as well. So Richard Verma becomes also this key person in the United States government in raising awareness of and getting assistance for and working with Armenia, as well as the Armenian genocide, which I couldn't put two and two together. Like, why? Okay, so Armenia has a pretty friendly relationship with India. Maybe that has something to do with it, but no. There's a little bit more to it than that. There's another angle, which, here it is. Yeah, oh, by the way, this is Richard Verma and taking the oath, working for Kerry, again, secretary, to become, ambassador. And the woman there, she's the wife of Richard Verma. And her name is Pinky. Pinky Verma. Pinky is a nickname. It's not her real name. Her real name is Mehmet or something. And she was born Mehmeti or something Blackwell. She was born in the United States. She was born in America. But her ancestry is Armenian. In 2024. Now, Biden is in his last full year as president, okay? Trump becomes president again, second term, January 2025 this year. By the way, I'm recording this on Tuesday, November 25th, 2025. Richard Verma makes a comment that his wife is Armenian. Someone might have told me before, but it didn't really register as being important. Her nickname is Pinky, and she goes by the name of Pinky Verma, but her real name is Meh or something. And her dad was a man named Frederick Blackwell, and Frederick Blackwell was a somebody. And Frederick Blackwell was with Cromwell and Sullivan. Frederick Blackwell had a law office in D.C. Frederick Blackwell advised several people in Congress. Frederick Blackwell was kind of a somebody. So I thought that, okay, so maybe there's some money with the woman that related to the family that Richard Verma married. But it's deeper than that. Richard Verma's mother-in-law, who's now deceased, was named Sonia Shiragian Blackwell. So this is the mother-in-law, the late mother-in-law of Richard Verma. But stranger still, the grandfather of Richard Verma's wife is Arshavir Shirakian. This is where it gets spooky. This is the point where I have to admit I texted a couple people last night that I'm scared. Arshavir Shirakian, now this is the grandfather of Richard Verma's wife. He was born in 1900. He died in 1973. Some people think it might have been born in 1902. He was an Armenian writer and assassin who is noted for his assassination of Saeed Halim Pasha and Semal Azmi as an act of vengeance for their roles in the Armenian genocide. In his memoirs, It Was the Will of the Martyrs, is a description of his life during the Armenian genocide and Operation Nemesis. So, let us review. Richard Verma is in Armenia. He's working with the Indian government, Modi. He's working with, nobody mentions India. They don't exist anymore, I guess. Only Israel. And he's with Macron. And the only thing that people know about Macron is that, I guess, Macron's wife is a cross-dresser. That's it. That's all people know anymore. No nuanced discussion about anything else. It's just Jews and genitalia and Masons and I don't know what else. It's so stupid. I'm so mad at citizen journalists for wasting people's time, wasting their hopes, and taking money which should be given to people who really are putting it all on the line to do it right, like Jonathan Cooey. So Richard Verma is in Armenia. He's with Macron. He's with Modi, talking about the Armenian genocide. And Richard Verma says, oh, this is such an important mission to me. My wife is Armenian. And as I said before, okay, Wikipedia is a great way to understand how information is conveyed and how people lie effectively. The way Wikipedia lies is through what it doesn't say. So saying that, hey, look at my beautiful bride. She's Armenian. You're like, wow, your family's been through a lot. They're real survivors. I can understand how you would feel so passionate about wanting to, whatever happened or didn't happen with the Armenia and the Armenian genocide, getting recognition, helping this new nation of Armenia rebuild, settling these border disputes. Wow, you are an incredible humanitarian. I understand the losses of your family. Now it all makes sense. And wow, so your wife is Armenian and you're Indian, and what a power couple you are, and how great it is that you can help out your wife. This is what Richard Verma doesn't say. Richard Verma could say this. He could say, well, yeah, my wife is Armenian, but I think to better understand her, you should know that my wife's mom worked with the United Nations as a translator for her dad, who was a highly celebrated assassin involved in the revenge murders and assassinations for the Armenian genocide. What you should know is my wife's grandfather just had a stone memorial built for him in Armenia to celebrate all of the assassinations against Turkish people because of Armenians that were killed. What you should know is that there was just a Christian Bale movie made in 2016 called The Promise, which only made like $10 million in the box office, but cost $100 million to make it, bombed, which was funded from the $1 billion put aside by another Armenian named Kirk Kerkorian out in Nevada to raise awareness of the Armenian genocide. What you should know is that this Christian Bale movie about the Armenian genocide, of course they turned it into a love triangle, was funded by Kirk Kerkorian, and the book involves elements of these revenge killings in Operation Nemesis and Arshavir Shirakian, who is the grandfather of Richard Verma's wife. What you should know is that Richard Verma marries his wife sometime in the 1990s, which would mean the top funder of Harry Reid in Nevada, Kirk Kerkorian. Kirk Kerkorian, by the way, was also MGM owner, co-owner. He owned movie productions. He worked with Harvey Weinstein. Kirk Kerkorian did, who I think was a real American badass, but just like every other good person in the Democrat Party, they eventually get taken advantage of. So I don't look unfavorably necessarily on Kirk Kerkorian, although he was definitely corrupt. I see him as pretty just a hard-driving badass, but just the same, eventually the money piles up and someone wants to misuse it for something else, and you become old and your children become fat and weak and entitled, and they're never as good as the parents because the parents actually had to go through some struggles. What you should know is you're Kirk Kerkorian, you're worth $1 billion, you're controlling the Nevada government.
You're Armenian, and you're making money hand over fist, and you're very successful, and you have a lifelong mission to get recognition for the Armenian genocide.
You have Harry Reid in your pocket. You made Harry Reid. You made Harry Reid in the 1990s. And now you know that the granddaughter of this famous Armenian assassin that you probably met in person just married this Air Force ROTC, hello Candace Owens, Air Force ROTC lawyer, Richard Verma. And then you go, Harry Reid, get on the phone. It's time for you to have a chance encounter with Richard Verma. And that is what happened probably in the 1990s. Richard Verma describes that as, I was just, I was visiting one day. I was in the Capitol building. I stopped by for a sub at the restaurant, and Harry Reid walked by, and we just started chatting it up. But in reality, it was Armenia genocide awareness money that put Richard Verma into contact with Harry Reid. Harry Reid then goes on to lead the Indian nuclear deal, as well as play a key role with the Iran nuclear deal, of course, working with India. Stranger still, there's another Armenian who's doing a lot of research in the 1990s related to peptides. Look, I'm sorry, but it just keeps getting worse. If you can't handle these many connections, I don't know what to tell you. But this is Naubar Afeyan, New York Times, June 8th, 1991, already celebrating him. MIT professor. He's going to make millions. He's got books being written already. Perceptive Biosystems, of course, they play a big role in the Human Genome Project. And he makes $500 million from there. Crazier still, here's July 20th, 2000, Baltimore Sun, man behind the genome map. And this is a guy named Tony White of Celera Genomics. Now we're talking people that are in the Judith Miller Germs book that accurately predicts a large-scale biological terror attack in a major U.S. metropolitan center. Now, what are the odds that this Armenian man is so well positioned to make so much money with technology connected to the Human Genome Project? Now, the Human Genome Project, as well as technologies such as microarrays, would have both made tons of money if there was an anthrax attack, but that didn't actually come to pass. However, though, there's a happy end to the story, because Naubar Afeyan then went on years later to become the founder of Moderna. Moderna was founded by an Armenian. The largest shareholder of Moderna was Armenian. While everyone is talking about the French guy or the Muslim guy or the German guy, everyone seems to, again, just like Richard Verma, miss the Armenian. This isn't a show where I can say this is what's happening, because I don't know what's happening. What I can tell you, though, is there's so much metadata here, and this stuff is obviously so gosh darn important, and nobody sees it. I can't summarize who's really pulling the strings. I will encourage you to not look for the bad guy. Don't look for the bad guy or the bad woman. Don't look for the bad person, because as soon as you're trying to find the bad person, you're not going to be looking anymore. What I am trying to showcase, though, is that this is way beyond just, a couple of bad apples, a couple of bad Americans, liberals or conservatives or pedos or Jews or Christians or Muslims or whatever other little handbasket you want to come at it with. There's something else happening here, and I can't quite describe it. But it's obviously very important for just a small nation with such a small population to be so all twisted up together. Now, Barafian, one of his biggest supporters, was a previous head of the Carnegie Institute, of course, during the 1990s and 2000s, and that was another Armenian, Vartan Gregorian, another name that nobody knows about. Nobody knows Vartan Gregorian, even though he replaced at the head of the Carnegie Institute David Hamburg, whose daughter Peggy Hamburg was the FDA director under Obama and spearheaded personalized medicine, and was, again, in the Judith Miller Germs book, pre-9/11, etc., 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 etc. Not to mention David Hamburg, father of Margaret Hamburg,
is seen by many and considered by many to be the founding father figure of
the United States Defense Threat Reduction Agency, the DTRA, that gets almost 2 whole chapters in Judith Miller Germs book. Oh, let's not forget the fact that the Judith Miller Germs book, written by Judith Miller, her dad was a lawyer that worked for Kirk Kerkorian in Nevada, probably with money that was raised and centralized for the purposes of Armenian genocide awareness. And the other day, I was playing some videos about the late Harry Reid right now, who Richard Verma worked extensively with. So again, to review, this all starts off with who's the guy standing next to Piper Stover? That's it. That was my question. We just connected all of those dots because we are like, who is that guy? What is this interview about? By the way, they never expected someone like Jonathan Cooey, PhD, and they certainly never expected me. Otherwise, they never would have done that video. This is supposed to be narrative control. I'm not supposed to exist. I'm supposed to have been drowned out or eliminated by now. Drowned out with bad research from Candace Owens and all the other clowns that promote her and the rest of the entire ecosystem. Whitney Webb has had how many books? Well, 2 giant books, 2 Encyclopedia Britannicas of endless, pointless connections to Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, there's also never mentioned, not one mention of Armenia in either of Whitney Webb's books, not one. In spite of the fact that, between Carnegie Institute and Moderna and genocides and Burma and India and Macron, et cetera, just Armenia just didn't come up. Just had too much to say about Epstein, I guess. And now, as we're seeing right now, Epstein, I think, is mostly an India UN-funded operation so that people don't think about India. So far, it's very effective because all people can do is just keep not talking about India. Are we having an impact? I think we are. And I think that is what I'm going to read in the second part of the show here, which I know that we are having an impact because I can see the articles on CNN. Racists are now openly targeting Indian Americans. This was November 16th, 2025, exactly 2 weeks after I started to say opening in clearly what the role of the Epstein operation is with respect to not talking about India, with respect to consistently highlighting every day or every other day that we have someone born in India, a nation that is the source of many components of fentanyl, denying the role of the opioid epidemic and using deaths that have occurred amongst America's many young people. More Americans have died, by the way, in the opioid epidemic than the Armenian genocide. And it's still ongoing, and we won't talk about it. Just saying. But anyways, now they are trying to get Americans to look as racist. Even though, average white family is making what? Median income, $70,000 a year? And the median income from an Indian family is around $160,000 a year. There's something screwed up here, everybody. If Indians are slaves coming into the United States out of desperation, then why aren't they repeating the same pattern of every other a new group which has come into the United States where they start poor, they get kicked down constantly, they get tough, and they have to work their way up? How is it they already have so many tech companies? And if it's because they're just harder working and smarter, then we have to start saying that, guess what? Not everyone is equal. You can't have it both ways. It's never happened before. And they're saying that racists right now, you can identify them. They're calling for the exportation of Indians. I'm not calling for the exportation of Indians. I am first and foremost asking for the United States to eject Americans that are backstabbing Americans. In particular, not having the capability of highlighting how corrupt it is that we have an Indian national running the NIH refusing to admit that the opioid epidemic even exists. Such as Marjorie Taylor Greene should be kicked out of the country. She should be mandated to be the first person to land on Mars. Just kick her off the planet. Seriously, she can't get out of Congress fast enough. That traitorous woman who is working with Ro Khanna, another Indian man, whose family goes back to revolution and journalism in India, who seems to be using the Epstein files as some sort of, Jewish hammer to destroy any conservative movement or any conservative groups and any a sense of pride the United States has. That's very different. Look, if people are born in the United States, if you're Indian, and by the way, our friend that Richard Verma and the rest of his associates all seem to want to sit on his couch of, is part Indian. No wonder why they were so pissed when, of all the Americans to stand up and do the right thing, Jonathan Cooey started showing up on YouTube. Worst case scenario, they would have wanted a blonde, blue-eyed American that they could just say is racist or something like that. Or maybe they would have preferred he's Muslim, and then you could use anti-Muslim sentiment against him. Instead, it was the worst case scenario. A multi-ethnic American born in Wisconsin. Holy shit. Worst case scenario. Just like the last thing they want is someone like me talking about the opioid epidemic, who had to attend the funeral of his own stepson. People are like, why aren't you answering your emails? Well, maybe I'm cleaning up the garden in the back that has some of our son's remains in it. Hello? This is real. This is Mark Kulak. It is November 25th, 2025. I'm feeling a little dark, which is why I'm playing this tech song a lot lately.
Where'd you find this?
Song got on some cocaine pink, carry me through this mystery. Song got on some cocaine pink, carry me through this mystery. Song got on some cocaine pink, carry me through this mystery. Song got on some cocaine pink, carry me through this mystery.
Before I go any further, I have a couple of ideas here, and I think this is just going to be presentationally. I'm not interactive today. I want to play a video of a recent interview between Patton Oswalt comedian, American comedian and actor, and Tom Papa, who's another American comedian. If you think I'm promoting their political ideology here, please don't look at that, okay? Patton Oswalt is he's definitely far left, generally speaking, but look, they're both Americans, and yeah, we're supposed to have different ideas about Americans. That's the whole point. We can talk, we negotiate, etc. So whatever. Patton Oswalt says something very interesting here. They're reviewing what it means to be a comedian in the modern era. Patton Oswalt highlights that, look, comedians should not be the new source of news. They should be not the new philosophers. Philosophers and researchers and journalists should be philosophers, researchers, and journalists, and comedians should be comedians, all right? A lot of needless things are being put on comedians right now. And then he highlights Jonathan Stewart and I forget what the other show is, how would you say, shows that are on like Comedy Central that sort of talk about current events and how some people are actually now using those shows to get their news. And he makes some interesting comments here.
Okay, this thing about, comedians are the new philosophers. They're the truth tellers. If comedians are the philosophers and truth tellers, then your society is in trouble.
I know.
Your society is in a lot of trouble. Comedians, the truth tellers and philosophers should be journalists and philosophers, not clowns. Like, no, but comedians are court jesters. It's like, do you know what the world was like when we had court jesters? Yes, they were able to say whatever they wanted because the world was so awful. The king was like, I'm just going to go have sex with your 14-year-old daughter and send your kids off to war because I'm in a bad mood. But here comes Corncob the farting dwarf. He's gonna call me fat, and that's going to balance it all out. So thank God for the jesters, the truth teller. It's like, no, that's not.
I know.
Having jesters is not a good thing.
I know.
Like a true comedian can not necessarily topple a king, but can change the way people. Jesters don't topple anything. They stay the jester, and the king stays the king. Don't wish to be a jester.
Yeah, there's no grown-ups left, so comedians now have equal weight of news people,
and they
shouldn't.
We should not.
We shouldn't. I saw someone attacking Andrew Schultz about something he was saying about. I think he was on with Charlemagne the God,
yeah.
And people were attacking Andrew because he got something wrong. He really did get it wrong, and about the Democrats and all this kind of stuff. And it was like, don't attack Andrew. This guy just ended up in this position. I know Andrew. Andrew's a nice guy.
Right.
Andrew is a very funny comedian. He is not a great thinker. He is not a journalist. He's not spending all of his time on these facts. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
So don't put him in a position where he is the arbiter of all the truth. He's a funny guy who now is getting traction from talking politics.
There are some comedians who I think kind of embrace and revel in the fact that, I am just as important as the news, and they don't realize, wait a minute, I should be put like someone like Charlemagne the God. As intelligent as he is, still tries to point people toward, no, please read these writers, please read these reporters.
Yeah.
There are certain comedians, who I'm not going to name, who do kind of act like, I am bringing truth to people, and that's the end of your career. When you start thinking like that, it was very telling how in the early 90s when people would tell Bill Maher and Jon Stewart, like, I get my news from you. And they would immediately go, you should not be getting your news from me.
Right.
I should be the dessert you have after you've read and thought about the news.
Yeah.
And then it all just got replaced with entertainment. And that's why we are where we are right now.
Well, that's a big point.
They were both very, very good at parsing the news, but then people just became, I'll just watch it that way.
Well, when when Hannity got in trouble and he said, no, I'm not news, I'm entertainment. That was his out for being called out on his mistakes. And he was very truthful and he said, I'm entertainment. But he doesn't treat it like entertainment. His audience doesn't treat it as entertainment. But it gives the entertainers now the same weight as these guys. So when you have a popular podcast, people just think it's the same as a news organization.
Yes.
Because we're all playing the entertainment game, not a news game.
It would be
So I think that's the point I wanted to get to here. They're equating, in many ways, getting your news, getting your information from a podcast as getting your news from an entertainer, getting from a comedian, and how you can't possibly get your news from a podcast or an entertainer. Now, many people are still going to get their news from podcasters. They'll still get their news from a Hannity, even though Hannity says he's entertainment. Some people will get their news from Oliver, even though Oliver says he's entertainment, and so on. And for some reason, this bothers me because, and then I reflect back on what I do. And I'm still I struggle often to describe it because I'm not a journalist in the sense that a journalist has to journal. A journal has to find, what's happening in the world. It needs to be journal. It has to be written down. Maybe it's just video captured, okay? People need to capture things and narrate them and to highlight them and organize them and save them and share them. And, the act of journaling, of course, it's always going to involve some bias. But without journalism, there's nothing to research. There's nothing to make sure it's saved. There's nothing to archive. And journalism is often, been intermingled with analysis and assessment and thought pundits and everything else. So while I've gone out and I have captured some things, more often than not, I'm not in the act of journaling. That doesn't mean I'm not a researcher, though. And I also prioritize a lot in archiving and organizing. And then, of course, I have, key things which I'm involved in trying to accomplish, such as overdose awareness, which is why when I was challenged to come up with a logo for a banner, because I made a $1,000 contribution to overdose awareness via the Team Sharing Group here in New England, I said research archival, overdose awareness, not journalism, and also not entertainment. Although I enjoy good music, although I enjoy a good laugh, I'm not here as an entertainer. If the drug crisis went away, if it got awareness, I'm not here as an entertainer. I'm not here, though I guess I could be funny. I'm not here to make you laugh. I'm not here as a joke. This is deadly serious. And when people do what I'm doing properly, sometimes things happen. This is a very serious thing. And I'm not here to say, don't take it seriously. No, take what we've reviewed here very seriously. This is not humor. This is not Oliver. This is not let's have some fun and make funny memes and talk about Epstein all day. Let's not pretend to care about kids and then and because we want to talk about Epstein and then laugh about it and do funny memes about it. And then, one of the most disgusting things that I've seen with respect to we care about kids is there was an event where Joe Biden was being videoed and several families were with him who all had one or multiple kids. And during the course of this photo shoot or videotaping, there's multiple moments where if you look at individual still shots, it looks like Biden is acting incredibly inappropriately with those children. When I first got on Twitter, I retweeted a few of those photos, not really thinking about what I was participating in. I was, over time you go, wow, I actually just promoted visibility to what is said to be a child having a traumatic memory. I actually did that. I feel so terrible. I can never undo it. I would never do it again, though. But I participated in that. That's not caring for a kid. That is me being an idiot and wanting to be on a team and showing to be right or something like that. Anyone that says they care about kids should immediately make their top priority to do the one thing that can save and help the most kids now. And right now, that would be awareness of the crisis of drug overdoses, many fatal, in the United States of America. Anything absent of that is being complicit in child abuse, child prostitution, child rape, and child trafficking. Anything absent of that, I'm sorry. If you think you are helping anyone by talking about Epstein, you're not. You are part of the problem. Kids will be hurt. Kids will be prostituted and taken advantage of because of your decisions to promote Epstein all day long above everything else. Who do you think is paying for you to do that and encourage you to do that? Anyways, this is a serious operation. This is not a joke. And there is something about this which I don't know if Papa and Oswald are participating in some orchestrated thing here for now you to say to encourage people to view everyone with a podcast as just an entertainer. I'm not an entertainer. The next article is I'm not even going to read it. I don't think because in all seriousness, my niece just got married today, and we have an event to get to. I need to clean up and so on soon. This was run very recently. Racists are now openly targeting Indian Americans. Last month, FBI director wished as follows: next happy Diwali. It did not go over well. Far-right Christian nationalists and white nationalists accounts flooded his post with bigoted memes and rhetoric. Go back home and worship your sand demons, a far-right pastor wrote. They target Vivek Ramaswamy, Nikki Haley, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Texas governor. This is really remarkable. So I expected that at some point, highlighting the ridiculous quantity of born in India people in U.S. government, in particular the NIH director, and of course there's although he was born in the United States, the current guy running CBER, and then the incredible power and influence. And I think he was given the opportunity initially because of his wife's role in the Armenian family role in the Armenian genocide and assassination, revenge killings. Richard Verma, they go straight to, well, anyone that brings this up is just a racist. I knew this was coming. And of course, not one mention of Jayanta Bhattacharya. Not one. Oh, and they say it's the same thing that what happened to black Americans. Really? I don't remember that time when white Americans were making $70,000 median income and black Americans were making $160,000 median income. Can anybody remind me of that time when black Americans were suddenly winning all of their races and were running the National Institutes of Health and running and were running the nuclear deal programs and et cetera, and had a vice presidency? When was that time? Because I'm having a hard time remembering that time. Aside from Taiwanese Americans, which is a very small group, the wealthiest families are Indian Americans right now, which is good for them. But if our justification for H-1B visas is to find people that are willing to do jobs for prices that can be afforded, where's the rationale? Are you telling me that every person from India is worth over two times as much as an American? Really? Are they really that better educated? Really? What is really going on here? And there's no hate in the street. The hate right now, the fact that we have white, blonde, blue-eyed sellout Americans that are willing to go along with it and not even call out Jayanta Bhattacharya on these lies. I knew that they would do this. And it's a sign that I did this. This CNN article is a direct response to me. You do realize that, right? This is a response to me. And it's even precision cut to avoid the topics that I say are most important. What opioid epidemic? Could you at least acknowledge it's happening? They are willing to cover it up. Again, because they're part of the machine too. And of course, one side, if you will, of America is going to see, anyone who calls it out is just racist. And the other side is going to be, again, split on ways that don't matter. If we had transparency about the pandemic and put the opioid epidemic where it belongs first, unfortunately, the opioid epidemic can't get visibility because it's in competition with Charlie Kirk's assassination. And they want to say, Air Force, ROTC, it's the military killing Americans, really? Well, let's talk about powerful Americans who were in the ROTC and Air Force, decorated Air Force lawyers, etc. Richard Verma. Oh, let's change the subject. We can't go there. So I have a wedding to get to, a wedding celebration to get to. I don't even know where this goes anymore. It's so crazy where we're at right now, and the reason why it's become so burdensome to tune in to any one of my shows is because it can't be built on the progress being made elsewhere aside from Joe Marshall over at Liberty Perspective, and in particular Jonathan Cooey, PhD. Because no one else is going here. They are still trying to pigeonhole in not one mention of the founder of Moderna, not one mention. They're having some creepy ceremony in a mountain in Armenia where they found the remains of Noah's Ark, celebrating DNA vaccines and recognition of the Armenian genocide. I mean, if you want like occultish, what the freak is going out here, things to read about, what is going on there? But nope, won't mention it. Won't mention it. Let's keep talking about Epstein and Israel. Let's not mention the fact that and by the way, I don't think Charlie Kirk was killed. And if he was killed, if there was one area where he tiptoed into that maybe was a little bit dangerous, and again, I'm not saying this is what happened, but if you want to think rationally about it, where's the area that he tiptoed in that would have upset the most people, involved the most money? It would have been the United States staying out of escalating conflict between Pakistan and India. Oh, and then just this morning, what do we have this morning? This morning, Marty Makary, head of the FDA, the Egyptian English guy, was on a video with a man named Patrick Bet-David, who is Armenian. Did you read his Wikipedia page? Jonathan Cooey mentioned it this morning. Jonathan J. Cooey, PhD. He mentioned he used to be a bodyguard helping to sell cocaine in Los Angeles, and then wound up somehow getting involved in government or something like that on September 10th, 2001. On the evening of, just before, on the same evening that Joe Biden was talking about planes filled with anthrax flying in the buildings and suitcase nukes. You really think that's a coincidence? As another Armenian involved in the Human Genome Project, Nober Afeyan, who went on the fund Moderna, he was also caught off guard somehow with respect to September 11th, 2001. What is going on here? This isn't about Armenians bad, Armenia being bad, Armenia doing 9/11. But what it means, though, is, okay, this can't all just be a coincidence. And Richard Verma doing the legal work with helping Robert Malone maybe with the IT setup of the Winber Center, which eventually becomes the Patrick Chan Soon-Shiong Center. How many of these people wound up on the Tucker Carlson show? Another guy that can't understand that maybe every once in a while we should say the word India. Won't say it. Tucker Carlson won't say it. Off limits to criticize India. China bad, Israel bad, and I guess we need to be worried about Zionists right now, all the time, and Jews and stuff. Pretty freaking amazing. If you look at the people that this Ben David, who says to be Iranian, and then now I'm starting to wonder about Sina Bavari, another Robert Malone associate, who came to the United States, wound up becoming the scientific director of USAMRIID, and again working with anthrax vaccines and DNA vaccines. Because, of course, the other Robert Malone associate who was worked at Columbus, Ohio. Can't think of that guy's name right now. Also working on DNA vaccines just before 9/11, using plasmids from Vical Corporation, a company that Robert Malone will hardly ever say. He'll try to do whole blog posts about mentioning the word Vical, Vical. It's just like most citizen journalists will never say the word Vical, Vical. Trying to protect the people that pay them to lie about why people die. I don't understand the Armenia thing. I don't. But it's obviously relevant. And then just a couple weeks ago, India announced that they're selling some of their fighter jets to Armenia at some discount price because they don't want them to buy the Pakistani jets, which I guess are, come from China or something. So China and India right now are involved in disputes and battles with each other to be weapons providers to other Asian countries. It's really quite amazing, all the stuff that's happening right now. And it's so close to the surface. Oh, my goodness. He definitely would know Richard Verma's wife. Of course he would. Because Richard Verma's wife is a hero for assassinating several Turkish people in response to the Armenian genocide. What a story. What a story that is. What a story that people could be talking about while they're trying not to talk about the things that matter most. Okay, I'm getting the dirty look here. I got to get going. Right, guys. Thank you for listening. Have a great one. I'll try to repost this one later if I can. But celebrations, and everyone just say a little prayer of good luck and thanks to the new couple that is united today, with God as their witness. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Take care, and God bless.